like a client of mine, he had actually not a self-talk, he had a like an inner movie going on. Every time he came home from work, he had the movie going on that he gets beaten up, bloody pulp. I mean, really very violent. And it was so disturbing for him because he was, for decades having the same event and he couldn't stop it. He didn't know what to do. Talking about his history, he said, well, that's basically what happened to me when I was a child. My father was a rageaholic. There was no reason, but every time I came home from school, he was beating me up. When we worked with the pattern resolution process, though, he realized that there was a moment when he was about 11 or 12 where he decided that actually, in order to have some sense of power, he was starting to imagine what will happen so that he actually was first. Rather than his father doing it to him, he did it in his mind to himself, which gave him a greater sense of control and basically gave him a sense of, I'm beating you to it. I already have beaten myself up. You're not doing it to me, out of surprise anymore. That protective pattern that was just like, keeping some kind of an integrity inside of him, that protective pattern was just running faithfully even after his father, was long gone. And obviously we were able to, stop this. But it's so interesting how, just like the negative self-talk, this pattern to protect us, to make us invisible, small, or keep us on our toes, to know that, there could be any time now rejection or judgment, that's simply something that has started somewhere in the past. And only by directly addressing it and, really learning from it and then getting an update on a subconscious level, you can stop it. And then, then usually, like in this little exercise we did, you will, in a few weeks, notice, oh, I can actually completely turn this around.
Yeah, and I like what you said. It's kind of an empowering and encouraging thought that it's not we doing this to us. It's like we beating ourselves up consciously, but it's actually a protective mechanism. It's
Yeah.
actually an incredible, beautiful, highly intelligent process that is going on. And I think it kind of almost gives us the power back, right?
It is empowering. You're so right. The protection is actually keeping us away from being who we are. In many ways, the protection is, letting us not really tap in our true potential. But when you are, and I call sometimes anxiety or, the healing catalyst or, the healing power of fear and anxiety, because when you really turn it around and you say, well, the more anxiety I have, the more untapped potential I must have inside of me. Because the more this anxiety tried to protect me, the more it prevented me from really, showing who I am. So when you are working with your anxiety and you're able to release it and change it, you're going to actually find out so much more about who you are, which then makes this whole work on anxiety not so much more about getting rid of it, but actually more like a journey of self-discovery. And that's obviously, for you a game changer because you're looking forward to working on your anxiety because it's like a treasure hunt. You're wondering, so what else can I be? What else can I find out about myself? And it's quite wonderful how people are seeing then at the end their anxiety actually a gift that led them to themselves rather than something that was a disorder or an illness that they were dealing with.
Yeah, which basically we coming back to the beginning where you said you don't really like to label it because it's just a process really that's going on in our body, and if we can turn it around, which is very doable, for really everybody. Can you just repeat the exercise with the thought, writing down the thoughts?
Yeah,
And let's really encourage people that are listening to really do this for however you recommend right now. Maybe you
I
have a
would
second
say,
one that you want to suggest. And then also give feedback if that's okay. If I can give feedback on the Facebook page and comment and how it helped them and all that. Is that okay?
please, that
Can you
would be
explain
wonderful.
again?
Absolutely. Yeah, so basically when you have a negative thought, write it down and then ask yourself in your head the three questions. Is that thought true? Does that thought serve me? Does that thought help me to reach my goals? That's kind of your reality check. In some ways, it pulls you back into yourself, rather than the thought having kind of a mind on its own and spiraling out of control. You're actually saying, no, stop. This is not really where I want to go, which is in itself empowering. But the mind doesn't like to be stopped. Anything that we say, stop, 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 usually it gets nervous, it gets, antsy, it wants to go somewhere else. So you need to redirect your mind. So that's where you take that specific thought and you counterbalance it with 3 positive perspectives. We know there's always, two sides to the story. There's always another perspective to have. And you are just then highlighting the positive. Let's say you say, I'm afraid that I have cancer. And then obviously you don't know that, when you're wondering. And then does this help you? No. Does it help you to reach your goals? No. And then you're going to say, my body has been healthy all the time. I know that, I have been going through these worries before and it always turned out to be well. And, I'm learning to trust my body and listen to what it has to say. I mean, you can come up with your own, of course, positive thoughts, but it needs to be a thought that really is addressing specifically the negative. And as I said, gives you a wider perspective. But then the key point is to realize who you're talking to. You're not talking just to yourself. You're talking actually to that part of you that is anxious, and that part of you could visualize, like we did in this exercise, as a younger self who just needs redirection, who needs support. So then really take on the role of the competent, calm, reassuring adult with compassion. Say those thoughts or write them down and feel these feelings, like feel the desire to help this anxious part to feel safer. Now, many people say, well, I don't really believe the positive thoughts 100%. You don't have to. It's not important. What you need to know is just that by simply doing this exercise and having some sense of compassion for your anxiety, for this anxious thought, you're already giving your mind another option, another direction, another way to think about, another way to go forward with. And that already makes a huge difference, because when we are at choice, at some point you can see yourself entering again into the anxiety triggering thoughts, and then you can choose, do I go in the right way, which is the positive thought, or do I go the old ways? And lo and behold, you have more ingrained this pattern of positive thinking, this pattern of reassuring yourself, which obviously will then also, as I said, in a rather short amount of time, reduce your negative thinking dramatically. So that's one of the exercises which I find very helpful. One other thing that I could really highly recommend is to go even one step further and really appreciate yourself more. Self-appreciation is such an underdeveloped habit in our society. We are way better in not feeling good enough or criticizing ourselves than really appreciating ourselves. And we are looking, for appreciation from others, which of course creates all these, sometimes dysfunctional relationships where we are pleasing, but not really ever being pleased with ourselves. So as an add-on, if you want to get extra brownie points, why don't we just write down every night 3 things that you appreciate about yourself on that day? Not about the world, not about your family, about yourself. What happens is that you're building a foundation of confidence, a foundation of self-trust. See, most people with anxiety don't have such a foundation. Their foundation is more a foundation of worry, a foundation of insecurity, a foundation of distrust. And in order to really heal and overcome this feeling of anxiety, you need to replace that foundation with a much more solid understanding of self. And self-appreciation is such a powerful tool to get there, and such a simple one at the same time.
And it's free.
And it's free, exactly. And it still makes you feel good. It's definitely something that it's a wonderful ending of the day as well when you do this. It really just gets you into, I had a client once who told me every night when she goes to bed, she's actually for the next day, programming her mind to find something that surprises her positively, like a positive, pleasant surprise. And she always found one, whether it was a penny on the street or a friend that she ran into. But her mind was like, like one of those truffle dogs looking for that truffle of the positives. If you do this with, self-appreciation, and you're already directing your mind to find more things to appreciate the next day, your mind gonna just look at what you're doing completely different and always wonders, oh, is this to appreciate? I can appreciate this, I can appreciate that, because you have directed your mind to please you, which is, as we said, one of the prime directives of the subconscious, and you please you by actually appreciating yourself. A very nice pathway to develop.